Hey, how's it going? This is Sam Sauter from West Channel Media. Over the last trailing 12 months, my partners and I have generated about $1.3 million in revenue for our own agency, and we manage about $300,000 per month profitably in paid advertising spend for a dozen clients at this moment in time. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about how we took a career consulting client from 0 to a 4.9x return on advertising spend on LinkedIn within the first 30 days, and that was a platform that they had never really leveraged before. So it sounds pretty obvious. It sounds like a no-brainer to do LinkedIn for a career consulting offer, but they had primarily been using Meta. They were spending, several $1,000s per day and generating about $1 million per month in revenue. When I met the founder who was sent to us through a referral, I told him that LinkedIn had a very high probability of actually exceeding the return on advertising spend that they were accustomed to getting on Meta. And I want to walk you through the thought process on how we generated them that return in such a short time period possible. Most businesses struggle to generate a profitable acquisition channel for 3, 6, 9 months. This founder had an incredible sales team, so I want to give him the credit there. We were able to crack this entirely new channel with him. Within the honest first 14 days, it became profitable. And this is going to unlock a lot of enterprise value for his business because he's now able to diversify his acquisition channels and de-risk the business, so to speak. So the first thing I want to talk about when we're launching an advertising campaign is the positioning. And the positioning is a very, very important variable. Now, this particular offer was teaching people how to become a data engineer, break into the data engineering space. It's a very high-paying job. They served a lot of people. But when I really got clear with the founder, there were multiple personas. There were people that were already into tech that were looking to kind of land this data engineering position. And then there were also people that were already on that data engineering path. When I think about positioning, typically what I'm thinking of is what product are we selling and which part of the market are we marketing that service specifically to? What does that mean? So in this particular instance, this business owner sold an offer that helped people become a data engineer. And they had 3 primary avatars. They had people that were not inside the tech world at all. We called those full transitioners. And then we had people that were data analysts seeking to become data engineers. These were people that were much more lower hanging fruit, in my opinion. They were already on that career track and they wanted to be kind of moved to that next level. So the analogy that the business owner gave to me is he said, these people are kind of like setters, and becoming a data engineer, it's already a mass desire that is deeply ingrained to them. It's like a setter transitioning from closer. Okay, now we're going to have to expand to broader and broader audiences if we want to be profitable and go after people that are less closely related. There's only so many data analysts right now in the world. But as a starting point, when I'm working with any businesses, I always ask myself, what is the lowest hanging fruit? Because if you're starting a new acquisition channel from scratch, that is going to be the hardest thing that you might ever do in your business, is figuring out how we're going to make the cash register ring, how we're going to profitably acquire customers to where they pay us more money than we invest in advertising spend in the first 30 days. I'm not so concerned necessarily about scale. I want to gun to my head, try and figure out what is the way that we're going to make this work in the shortest time period possible. So one of the reasons why I think we've been so successful as advertisers is we try and find out what is the low hanging fruit audience that has the highest affinity, highest likelihood to be successful. Somebody who's already on that data analyst career path wanting to become a data engineer, that's a very low hanging fruit. That's very easy sale to get them to go from there to there. It's an improvement offer on what they're kind of already doing. Versus somebody that is not even in the tech space, that's a pretty challenging sale. There's series and different layers of beliefs that we have to break. Okay, versus somebody that's already on that career path, I would much rather just start by working on this specific audience here. And if I actually wanted to scale these campaigns, I advise the business owner that I would actually prefer to go after data analysts in other countries rather than go towards, software engineers and, database engineers, people that were in IT. I would actually feel much more comfortable taking something that's already working in one country and moving it to another once we have that proof of concept. Generally, Alex Hormozi is famous. He pioneered this. Is what I'm trying to find is once I have something that is working, I'm much more biased to do more of that thing, much better of that thing, than I am to try and pursue something new. Okay, so this positioning was clearly working for us. We had a 5x return on advertising spend just in the first 30 days. And a lot of the leads are actually in the pipeline right now. So we might actually be able to get that as high as a 6 or a 7x return on advertising spend just within the first 30 days. Another example is this. We had a client recently who was a franchisor, had a very large business, providing them with services, providing them with tech, knowledge, experience, and how they could improve and make more money in their wholesaling, their fixing, and their flipping business. When in reality, it was really just an issue with the positioning, is that he was marketing this as a mass market business opportunity for people to break into the real estate space. Now, if he wanted to scale, obviously he's going to have to do that. You're now transitioning from a real estate coach to you're just selling a business opportunity. You're just selling make money. In order to do that as a marketer, you have to break several layers of beliefs. The more further away your target customer is, the more beliefs that you had to break. Okay, so for instance, you would have to break the belief of why they should pursue real estate versus other possible business ventures. Versus if you start with somebody who's actively already in the wholesaling, fixing, flipping business and you want to coach them, there's much less beliefs that need to be broken. We do this constantly with all types of businesses. We just find their marketing too broad or they're serving too many avatars. People don't typically realize that even the smallest niches are still $50 to $100 million per year. As human beings, we're kind of biased and we always think that our niche is very small, that we're very this unique, special snowflake, but there's so many examples of this. You can just serve, med spas, and that can be a $200 million per year business. It's hard for us to fathom the size of a particular niche. It's in no way limiting you the size of that particular niche. We had an offer that was specifically servicing lower middle market private equity firms that did incredibly well. And we just knew that this is only the people that we're going after. And the messaging and the marketing sound ultra potent to those people, but people have it backwards. They're scared of disqualifying and excluding certain subsets of a market because they feel like they're going to make less money when in fact it's quite the opposite. So focus on just bringing in the low-hanging fruit avatar to start with. You want to position your product to start to the avatar that has the least amount of beliefs that need to be broken. Somebody that is already on that career path, already on that career trajectory, rather than trying to pull in some completely new, unique person that you think you could help. So that's pretty much all that I'm going to just say on positioning as a whole, but just think to yourself, who in my business do I currently service? Who are my dream customers? Who are the easiest people to sell? And start with the lowest hanging fruit. You might find that you might be able to add $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a day in advertising spend, and you might have a 4 or 5x return on advertising spend just by starting with the lowest hanging fruit. So everybody's so concerned about scale before scale is even an issue. Okay, we're close to about scaling these campaigns to about $1,000, $2,000 per day on a 5x return on advertising spend, just starting with the low hanging fruit avatar that there is. We will deal with scale when scale is an issue, but don't solve an imaginary problem that hasn't presented itself yet. And when we do want to scale these campaigns, it will be a little bit harder, and the return on advertising spend I do expect to be lower, but we've essentially found a particular job title, which is these data analysts wanting to be data engineers, that is a pocket of traffic that could easily add hundreds of thousands of dollars per month to the business. We've already added $50,000 in revenue to that business within the first 30 days of working together. Okay, now that we've covered positioning, let's quickly talk about the funnel strategy that we leverage for this business. Now, if you're familiar with my work and you studied some of the other videos on this channel, one of the reasons that we have so much success with LinkedIn lead form campaigns as opposed to sending them to a landing page is that with LinkedIn lead form campaigns, you're able to have the prospect autofill their LinkedIn profile URL. When I discovered this as a marketer, I thought it was pretty revolutionary because my entire career as a marketer, you're in this challenging situation to where you constantly need to ask a series of qualifying questions on an application to obtain information to see if a lead is qualified. However, every additional question that you ask drives up your lead cost and makes it your cost per call significantly higher. So you have to play with this delicate balance of trying to not add too much friction, but not add too little friction. With LinkedIn, it's a completely different story. Because this profile URL can autofill, the end user doesn't have to exert much effort, but you as the marketer get so much information, pages and pages of information about that person. Think about it. Having access to a profile URL gives you access to the company, everybody that they work with, their job title, their career history. It gives you so much information. I found that if I just add the website as a required field on some of my advertising campaigns on Meta, just the very act of them having to manually punch in that information as opposed to an easy multiple choice that they can skim through like they can on the LinkedIn lead form can increase my lead costs as high as 50 to 60 to 70%. So you're so spoiled on LinkedIn by having this ability to obtain pages of information while the end user isn't burdened by having to fill out that information. And the other thing is that LinkedIn lead forms are completely different from Facebook lead forms. If you ever run Facebook lead forms, it's the most frictionless option that you have available to you as a marketer. If you send them off a platform, you're always going to pay a premium in terms of lead costs. Now, lead forms is a strategy that we've successfully used with tons of clients and have generated insanely high returns in a lot of instances. But in some offers, in some markets, it's just very difficult to make Meta lead form ads work very well because they're so frictionless. The lead quality, it just isn't quite there. Now, with LinkedIn ads, on the other hand, the quality is incredibly high. People aren't necessarily going to LinkedIn because they want to be entertained. They're going there because they want to learn, they want to improve, they're cognizant of their professional reputation, and they're there necessary to do something productively. The average LinkedIn user only spends about 7 minutes to 8 minutes per day on the platform versus some of the social channels like Meta, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. They can spend upwards of a couple hours per day. So we have never in our career using LinkedIn lead forms had an issue with lead quality versus it's actually a very common issue and obstacle that we have to face with Meta when we're advertising there. Oftentimes the quality on Meta suffers so much that we just need to send them to a landing page, add a little bit more friction in the process to dial in the lead quality. LinkedIn, it has never been an issue. What we find is with our clients on LinkedIn, about 30 to 50% of all LinkedIn leads are resulting in a meaningful phone call that shows for an appointment with the business owner. That is an amazing statistic. 30 to 50% of leads converting into appointment and showing up is a very, very healthy sign, okay? And we're paying right now for most of our clients between $50 and $120 for a lead. So the cost per call is actually completely synonymous to that of Facebook because on Facebook, yes, the cost per lead is significantly lower, but we're usually disqualifying about 80 to sometimes as high as 90% of the leads are not actually showing up for a phone call. Okay, so that's the trade-off. The lead costs are marginally higher, and that's not necessarily attributed to the CPMs being very high on LinkedIn. It has more to do with the fact that the click-through rate on the platform as a whole is much lower, okay? That results in a lead cost that usually raises 30 to 40 to 50% compared to what you're experiencing on Meta, but the quality is significantly higher. The people on LinkedIn are much more mindful, cognizant of their click. They're not necessarily as scattered, disorganized. Most of our Facebook advertising campaigns, we have a click-through rate of about 3 to 5%. On LinkedIn, however, the click-through rate can be as low as about 0.3%. On some of these are profitable campaigns, by the way, to as high as about 1.1%. The clicks have so much more meaning and significance behind them on LinkedIn. People are intentional versus on Facebook. They're much more curious. They're browsing, they're scattered, they're disorganized, they're dopamine seeking. So yes, you can get a higher click-through rate, but the quality is significantly lower than what we're experiencing on LinkedIn, specifically in a B2B setting. So I'll flash here quickly to the screen just to show you the LinkedIn lead form that we were leveraging with this business to give you guys an idea. After somebody had filled out that lead form, we collected the contact information very quickly. A setter team reached out and started outbound dialing those leads, and then they were sent to a VSL page where they could be nurtured, warmed up more, and had the opportunity to book a call. Anytime that I'm working with a B2B client or a very sophisticated B2C offering, I try to start with a funnel that is as frictionless as possible, collect a phone number and email address as soon as humanly possible before asking them to book the call. That can drive up too much friction. Most prospects are not going to commit to booking that phone call until they've obtained more information via email, spoken to a salesperson or appointment setter that they like a lot. So just having the ability to collect that early is super important before sending them to the VSL and the booking page. Now that we've talked about the funnel strategy and specifically the LinkedIn lead form strategy, let's quickly talk about the targeting option that you have available to you on the platform. So typically when I'm leveraging LinkedIn advertising, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create hyper-specific, tight audiences of potential prospects that range from about 50 to 150,000 persons on that audience. The reason I don't like to go much bigger than that is the LinkedIn algorithm is not as sophisticated as the Meta advertising algorithm. With Meta, I'm typically able to target very broad, give a very clear indicator of who I would like as my ICP or my ideal client profile, and then Meta's algorithm is so sophisticated it will find those people for me. One of the things that is beautiful about Meta advertising is that you can start with a much lower testing budget because you really only need to test creative. You don't need to test creative and targeting. LinkedIn, on the other hand, is a much different platform. The AI is not sophisticated, so therefore you must test different messaging, different creatives, and also different targeting options to find out what not just going to generate the cheapest cost per lead, but also the lowest cost to acquire the customer. So for this particular business owner, we found that the job title data analyst was a very large audience size, so we had to break that up into smaller subcomponents, and we started filtering by different industries, different company sizes. We generated about a dozen different ad sets. We were targeting about $50 to $100 per day. We used a cost cap bidding strategy to keep our costs very, very low. And another pro tip is we also leverage the job title of data analyst in both current data analysts and also people that had in past indicated that they were a data analyst. This unlocked a tremendous amount of scale. And although I would still put the lowest hanging fruit on people that are currently data analysts versus somebody that was data analyst in the past, they have some momentum that's fighting against them in that career path versus people that are already actively engaged in that role are much more likely to want to ascend and engage in a type of offer like this. But nonetheless, I still felt it was very low hanging fruit, and the conversion rate between the two leads of these sources was actually synonymous. So having the past job title actually unlocked tremendous scale for these advertising campaigns because there's typically about 10 times as many people that were a particular job role than there are currently in that job role. By just leveraging current, past data analysts as their job title, filtering by different company sizes, filtering by different industries, we were able to have a very healthy audience size. We were spending about $500 to $700 per day. Our cost per lead was about $50 to $45. Our main messaging in the ad, I will flash to our winning ad right here. The main messaging that was working with us was simply become a data engineer and then including the compensation range from these roles, which was very attractive, ranging from about $130,000 to about $400,000 per year, depending on their experience. Now, I had to ask the business owner and really get to know his ideal client profile. And what I asked him is I said, is the data engineering, is becoming that particular job title already a mass desire within your marketplace? And what he said is yes. He said it's very obvious and it's very coherent and it's very prevalent within that space that data analysts want to become data engineers. Now, that same messaging would not work if we started transitioning further out to people and started positioning this as a pure business opportunity or just a change in career path. We would have to completely change our messaging, our offering, our sales process, our nurturing. We would have to break so many more limiting beliefs. But because we positioned ourselves of just going after the clients that already had 9 out of 10 of the beliefs that we wanted to have, just by offering them this unique offer that was not very competitive, we didn't have a lot of entrenched people in the space, we were able to just lead with that simple messaging of become the data engineer. Here's an example of another creative right here. We were able to start getting qualified leads at about $40 to $50 per lead. About 20 to 25% of those leads were being resulted in a book phone call. We had a 50 to 75% show up rate. We had a 50% offer rate. That led us with a cost per offer made of roughly $500 to about $800. And we had a 35% close rate on a $10,000 offer, which yielded us that 5 to 6x return on advertising spend. Now, I don't want to take too much credit for having the success of this campaign because candidly, this business was doing a bunch of great things before I came into the business, okay? They were already doing $1 million per month on other channels. I knew they were going to be very successful on LinkedIn, specifically for a career consulting offer. It was a no-brainer, but just a few tweaks in the media buying, the targeting, the positioning made that return on advertising spend actually exceed the return that they're getting on the other channels. channels. It's continuing to scale every single day now. I'll keep you updated here once we scale past $1,000 per day in ad spend. We're currently spending about $600 per day on advertising spend for this offer. And the frequency on our campaigns, which is a measure of how many times are people on average seeing the ad, is very, very low. This is a great indication that we're going to have success scaling. I believe our current campaigns will scale to $2,000 or $3,000 per day and sustain a 4 to 6x return on advertising spend at scale, which will add about $100,000 to $200,000 per month in gross profit to that business. And the last thing that I want to mention is that the reason I believe this offer does so well on cold traffic and converts on cold traffic like other offers don't is you want to try and find offers that have a specific problem to a specific person. So this is as niche as you can possibly be, and the business still does 1.5 to, close to about $2 million per month right now. And that's because it's a very specific offer to a specific person, to a particular avatar. We live in a world of fluff and nonsense of, make more money online and career consulting and stuff like that. He could have never have charged $10,000 to $15,000 for this offer if it was generalized career consulting. Number one principles of marketing and sales and persuasion is the more specific something is, the more believable it is. And if you're everything to everybody, you're nothing to nobody. You want to have a hyper-specific message, a hyper-specific deliverable, and a very clear, tangible ROI, if possible, towards one specific avatar. It increases the believability that they will get results, because in life, people intuitively know this, that all the results come from the nuance. Okay, if this had been an offer where it's generalized career consulting, I'm not paying $10,000 for that. But if I knew for sure that you could definitely help me save 25% in the operational efficiency of my manufacturing company, that's an offer that we're working on right now, I believe it's going to do incredibly well, because there's such a high degree of confidence in that end user and you being able to deliver this very narrowly defined problem that you've outlined in your marketing. And then there's also this positive compounding flywheel effect that happens in the background, which is the sales team gets better at selling it, and you also get better customer results because it's a more narrowly defined problem. And then you have more trust, proof, brand credibility behind that, which then creates this flywheel that allows you to convert more customers because you have more testimonials of people that look exactly like the ideal person that you're trying to help. Okay, so that's what I really respect about the founder of this company, is that he became so niche, so narrowly defined about who he was solving and what problem he was going to solve for. And he had tons of money and opportunities thrown at him along the way, but he chose to remain very focused and serve one narrow avatar and help them serve one narrow pain point. This is the common factor that we see across our most successful clients. I was working with one of the most famous business influencers in the world, top 5 business influencers in the world. I spent 1 year with him running his paid ads. We had about a 2 to 3x return on advertising spend for that year together. We were spending tens of thousands of dollars per day. For close to a year, I worked with this particular influencer, and it took me a year. I never understood why we couldn't do better than a 2 to 3x, considering this person had a tremendous brand or reputation behind them. And the real reason I found out of why we were never successful able to scale that offer is that I had a mentor come into my life and he said, Sam, it's hard to sell because it's not a specific offer to a specific person. We were marketing and saying, hey, this is my brand, this is what I've done. If you have a business, I'll help you grow it. It was just kind of fluffy, right? It didn't really sound like it was everything to everybody. It was kind of nothing to nobody. Even the person that was this successful as he was, it still was like a 2 to 3x return on advertising spend, which is decent, right? After you pay sales team commission, appointment setter commission, sales management commission, there's overhead associated with some of these offers for $10,000 to $15,000. It's really not super meaningful. And that same offer would not have even worked remotely well if that person didn't have tens of millions of followers that he had on social media that particularly followed him just for business advice. That's how challenging and how detrimental being broad in your messaging can be to your marketing campaigns. Okay, so I'm just going to summarize everything that was covered today in this video, and then we'll conclude. The first thing that we went through and that we talked about today was the targeting and the positioning. Prior to working with any client at West Channel Media, our agency, we have big onboarding forms that we ask our clients to fill out, where we try and obtain as much information that we can about all the avatars that they've serviced in the past, what each of those customers are worth for them, and then we try and focus on the lowest hanging fruit and position it to the avatar that has the least amount of beliefs that need to be broken. We don't want it to go so far and target these mass market business opportunity people that wanted to break into tech. We wanted to target the people that were already into tech and helping them move better, because that person has so many less belief, less convincing than other people who are just trying to think about breaking into that role. The second thing that we did is we helped them create a LinkedIn lead form campaign that captured the profile URL of all the applicants. This allowed them to see if somebody was qualified and know certain if they were qualified or not before ever making a phone call, which was a much less frictionless funnel and not just using the same funnel that was working for them on Meta. In terms of the targeting on the platform, we selected the job titles that was that lowest hanging fruit. We expanded that audience size by including current and past people that were in that role. Now that might not make sense for your business, but it did for our particular offer here. And then we started creating hyper tight specific audiences that were between 100 to 200,000 persons. And we created about a dozen different audiences, spending about $50 to $100 per day on those dozen or so audiences. And then selecting a cost cap bidding strategy that allowed us to not exceed a target CPA or a cost per lead. And then lastly, this offer was successful because it was a hyper specific problem to a hyper specific avatar. If you're everything to everybody, it's nothing to nobody. People don't believe it. People don't see the value for it. Because this was just such a niche niche thing, helping data analysts become data engineers, just helping people in general become data engineers. It was incredibly believable for the person when they got off the phone that they could receive that desired outcome. So they were willing to pay $10,000 to $14,000 on a first introductory phone call. And between all of this, all the factors that we talked about here, this resulted in about a cost per lead of $40 to $50, cost per call of $200 to $300, a 50% show up rate, a 50% offer rate, which is a little bit low, and a close rate that was about 35 to 45% on this channel. That'll be a very common variable and a common theme that we see across all of our clients on LinkedIn, is that there's a very higher conversion rate than other platforms. HubSpot, one of the largest CRM companies in the world, they found that LinkedIn was converted 3 times higher result than all the other platforms combined. We weren't surprised by that 35% close rate. The thing that we're really working on with this business is trying to keep the show up rate and the offer rate a little bit lower. We're adding some more appointment setters and changing their SOPs slightly. We're having the appointment setters review each individual LinkedIn profile you're out, leveraging that additional information that's available to them on LinkedIn that is not available to them on other platforms, just making sure they're being very tactful, very nuanced, and very custom in their outreach. That is pretty much everything that I have for you today. That is how we took this completely new channel, added onto the business, added about $50,000 in revenue, 5 to 6x return on advertising spend within the first 30 days of working together. This is a very big deal because once you've cracked a platform, it's very, very easy to scale that. The hardest thing is going from 0 to 1 in all of advertising. It's not uncommon that you'll spend 60 to 90 days trying to go from 0 to 1, but then going from 1 to 10 is much, much easier. And having that additional diversification to your traffic and not being solely reliant on Meta, where you're subject to an ad account ban or maybe a drop in return on advertising spend, having this diversification of other platforms like a LinkedIn, it's phenomenal for your business. You'll sleep better at nights. And I highly encourage you, if you're a B2B marketer, to try leveraging some of these strategies and run your first LinkedIn advertising campaign. Without further ado, if you would like to speak with myself or somebody on our team about me potentially mentoring you if you're doing less than $50,000 per month in revenue in your business, or if you'd like to have a conversation about me potentially running the ads in your business for you, that is solely for businesses doing at least $50,000 to $100,000 per month in revenue. Our average clients doing between $200,000 and $300,000 per month in revenue. But if you think you're qualified for that, I encourage you to book a call below regardless. You'll either be speaking with myself or somebody on my team. I look forward to speaking with you, and I hope this was valuable and helpful for you. So thanks so much. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.